Okay, welcome. So this is my first video released, Let's Heal, Let's Talk. And I've been waiting to introduce my guest for a long time. She was first on the list, and it is Audreia Josephs. Welcome. So pleased to have you
Thank
on
you.
here.
Thank you for the
Now,
invitation. Thank you.
you were first on the list. Now, you specialize in something that I really know that I needed to talk about, but just wasn't ready. Okay. And that is forgiveness. Okay. You've released a book in 2016, and it's called
Yes,
Forgiveness, the Journey to Healing the Heart, right?
yes, yes.
Keyword healing, right? Because we
Mhm.
know that forgiveness is a journey, and like I said, I was not ready to address it, and
Mhm.
to start my own healing, which is what I've done.
Mhm.
Now, my intention today was to talk about my own abuse, and we can address that later. But something has come up lately, and it's Friday the 29th, 2020. And once again, there's been another murder, where George Floyd was actually, he died in custody. The video's out there. And, you know, I feel so helpless. And I think right now we need to talk about abuse and forgiveness, because I feel like, this is something that Black people can be very like this is what's happening to us. But there are people, like myself, who also want justice, and also really feel that Black Lives Matter. So I'd really love for you to, for us to talk about this as well in light of that. So
Yeah,
please,
it's something that I've had to just inhale and exhale on. It's a really deep conversation. And the thing is, today has been a difficult day to even go onto Facebook, because when you go on there, you're seeing the images.
Mhm.
I'd seen it, I think, yesterday or the day before. And it brought back my own trauma as well, which was really weird, because I telephoned a friend and I said to her, I remember having an experience like that, but, giving thanks that I didn't die. And
Okay.
seeing it, just realizing, and I'm just thinking that as people of color, we've been traumatized worldwide. I'm seeing how people are being treated in Africans in China. They're basically being blamed for the coronavirus. And it's a mass worldwide where people are just showing um, their dislike for people of color. It just comes naturally. But I'm also of the opinion, but this is only Audrey's world, is that things are rising to the top and being exposed, very much like a wound that was festering. And when there comes a time for change, it pops and splutters out, come out the corruption. And so it's come to the surface now. You know,
Mm.
it's very much like, I'd say sediment in the bottom of a bottle. Everything is rising up now. So
Yeah.
you're actually seeing the ugly face of it. And as a person who speaks about forgiveness, you know, um, I've actually mused about this, because I don't know how true it is that he's the guy who was killed, George, his fiance has come out and said that should forgive the person who did it now. He was a Black man and she apparently is a white woman. So it just makes me think about the duality of the conversation as well. Yes, I have no idea whether this is true or it's just another added on to the story, because you know how things can be. But actually centering on George himself, and centering on the fact of this, we're born this color. We didn't choose, in as much as other races didn't choose theirs. You just come into this world,
Mhm.
into this physical body through no choice of our own. And to see people being treated that way, I said to myself internally, where does forgiveness come in this? You know, because even I feel angry too. Even I
Mm.
feel hurt too. So, yeah, I'm feeling pretty hurt about all of this, that because I am born the way I am, that someone can disregard me. And like I was saying, this with forgiveness, I know from my own experience, from what happened in my life, there was a time I wouldn't forgive, never thought I'd even mention the word forgive. And for me, it ended up being within time. And even in this, in similar situations, I have come across stories where people have, the mothers of the person who was murdered have chosen to forgive. And I think they're courageous women. I speak about forgiveness, and there are really difficult things, especially when you're a mother, when someone takes your child, and that's a really
Yeah,
hard kind of
because
thing to
it
release.
it's interesting because my eldest, he's mixed race. My kids are mixed race, and
Mm-hmm.
my eldest, he's very big for his age, and I have had to address him like a black man, because when
Mm-hmm.
people see him, they see a black man, you know, and for me, I have had to be very you know what's the word, enlightened onto how I approach this subject. So from a very young age, he was reading books written by Martin Luther King, etc. For him to understand his identity and who he is in the world. But there is a grave injustice in that. And this is the bit that I think where forgiveness becomes so difficult.
You're
So,
saying how you feel about this.
yeah, and it's only natural for me to get angry, and I don't want to have to I feel like I am lowering myself to say to my son, take time, son. You know, don't be caught outside with no bunch of white girls, because if they bail out rape, you're in trouble,
You're
son.
the first one that's going
Recognize,
to
you know
go.
what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And but it's the reality, and I think it's honest. Like I said, forgiveness is really
Injustice.
hard, even for
Mm-hmm.
me to, you
Yeah.
know, I have to humble myself. Why do I have to humble myself? And that's the bit that I think is really difficult when you're at that point. And and one thing that I think has been interesting in the whole journey of abuse and forgiveness is when
Mm.
we acknowledge that forgiveness is not for others, it is for ourselves, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
um
Mm-hmm.
and that's the bit that I really want you to give me a wealth of information on, because I'm in the process of healing, Audrey. I've got time. We're in lockdown. I have time on my hands to meditate
Mm-hmm.
and it's painful, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm.
It's not
Mm-hmm.
easy, forgiveness. And there are some people in the whole situation that I still haven't forgiven. For example, family members, how they responded to when I had been abused as a kid. So two things really I wanted to touch
Mm.
on is how forgiveness can be powerful for the self. And what about if you don't choose to forgive? You know?
I am firstly of the opinion, I'll start from here, that forgiveness happens when you are ready for a change, a shift in your life. For
Mm,
me, as you know, I came from being molested at the age of 3, sexually abused at the age of 8. I was a battered child for 10 years, broken ribs, all sorts of stuff, right? And people ask me often, how do I forgive? Especially when the damage was caused by someone who was supposed to love me, you
yeah.
know? Um, and so it's it was really difficult at the time going through, and it took me near enough 45 years to forgive. So it didn't happen overnight.
No.
It didn't happen in a moment. And it was like, I'd say, an onion. It came off a layer at a time. And with each layer, it was raw. Every layer was raw and tender. And in actual fact, it was when I started acknowledging my pain and acknowledging that I was hurt, really looking in the mirror and recognizing the fact that it didn't help me to move forward in my life.
Because
You want me to say
isn't
something?
there a point where you think you've forgiven,
That's
but
a good one.
you haven't? Like, I've got to a point where I was like, yeah, I thought that I forgave. And then another situation comes up, you know, for example, a family member came
Mm,
back, one of the family members who had not responded very well and
mm,
chose to turn their back on me. And then years later was like, you know, I'm just calling to see how you are. Great, I can have a conversation. But then
mm.
she wanted to exchange some money for me and my kids, and I couldn't give her my bank details. I was like, damn, you know what? I'm really bitter about something. And I realized I haven't forgiven this woman. I have not forgiven her, you know? So please, you know, help me.
Okay. I'm going to share a couple of things that are floating through my head really quick. And
Mm-hmm.
one was when I was writing my book, um, there was something that happened whilst writing the book. And I'd gone to visit my mother because she was the one who actually battered me for 10 years. So, so and I'd gone to visit her. And I was in the space where I've forgiven her. I was deciding that everything was just, I'm just going to move on because I hadn't spoken to her for many years. And I'm just making a reconnection. And what happened was I'd gone to visit her and she said something and I got angry. But I didn't say anything to her. I left. And when I left, I was angry. I was so mad. And I was just walking because I find walking is a great therapy for me. And I was walking and I was questioning myself constantly. Why are you still mad when you've already forgiven? And the thought came to me, Audrey, forgiveness is not one size fits all. And definitely, I've recognized this. I forgave her, let's say it's north and south, north, east, south, and west. That's what forgiveness is, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I'd forgiven her in the north, I'd forgiven her in the east, I'd forgiven her in the west, but I never forgave her in the south area. So there were parts of me still that held on to the anger. So when I'd forgiven some things, I hadn't forgiven all things. And I recognized it was because there was a part of me personally, unconsciously, because I've got a degree in psychology as well. So I just love the workings of the mind. And I recognized that there was part of me that was invested in the story. I told the story and wore it like a badge of honor. And so I could whip this story out every now and again and sing the blues. And of course, what I was getting was people saying, oh my God, this is terrible. This is awful. You went through that. And so I was getting this kind of a payback because people were giving me sympathy and I was being a victim. So
Mm.
for me, it was that, but it was done unconsciously. And so I was like, oh, so this happened to show me because I asked, shine a light on all the dark areas. I asked Creator, shine a light within me on all the dark areas. And that was an opportunity for healing. And so I started recognizing that it was a gift. It was a gift because it helped me to see there was a part of me that wasn't healed.
Because what I was thinking was that, does someone have to ask you for forgiveness for you to forgive them?
No, no. In actual fact, forgiveness is for you. It's not for the other person. No matter what happens, the easiest way I can say it to people so they understand it is forgiveness is, it's easy for someone to say, well, you've gone through this, why should you forgive that person? They've done that, they've done the other, and we can clearly see what's happening in the world. And there's no way I can speak on forgiveness on certain issues,
Mm-hmm.
especially not now, it's too raw, right? But what I do know is it depends on the level of peace that you want to live with in your life.
Mm. And that's what I'm
You know,
saying is that, you know, there is part of me that wonders, I guess because I know that certain people will never be like, Shalina, forgive me,
Mm.
you know, and I want that, you know, and a part of
Yeah.
me feels like I deserve that. And I think that's the bit that hurts really bad and rips
Mm.
open my wound every time I'm in that
Mm.
position, you know, and I
But
put
you know, it's
myself,
an expectation. It's an expectation that lets us down. We are expecting other people to behave in the way that we would be. Hurt people hurt people. We've heard that before.
mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
so for me, how I was able to forgive was I was able to see the perpetrators as children who need healing themselves. So therefore I took the power away from them
yeah.
because
Yeah, I
they were
mean,
more powerful in my life. They were more powerful because they did it to me. But then as an adult now, I reframed the picture and looked at it from different lens.
yeah, that's really powerful. That's interesting because I think when I viewed those around me and viewed their ideas about abuse and what they were exposed to and what their
Mm,
perceptions were,
mm,
it really helped me forgive.
mm, mm,
You know, because nowadays when you go into schools or whatever, they teach you what abuse is in a way. You know, if someone
mm,
touches you or whatever, you know,
yeah.
and you go to the police, it's something serious. But my
Mm,
parents and the generations around that
mm,
time, it wasn't, you know,
mm,
sexual abuse was happening, you know,
yeah.
and there was no serious repercussions for it. It was just swept under the carpet, you know, and that was it. But it
Mm,
definitely did
mm,
help me find a peace, you know, in
mhm,
terms
mm,
of addressing forgiveness, you know.
yeah.
So, okay, so are there stages of forgiveness?
Depends on the subject matter.
Mm,
It really does. It depends on the individual. But for me, I found myself in spaces where my mom's passed away now. Since I've
God
written the
rest her
books,
soul.
passed
Yeah.
away, yeah, 3 years now. And I would say that I'm at peace
Mm-hmm.
because I'm at peace because I made my peace. And I kept saying to myself, who would I be today had I not dropped that weight? Had I not dropped that dead weight from me? Because that was the biggest thing, one of the biggest things, that I had since I was a young girl. It was
Mm-hmm.
something that I carried for a long time, as you know. I said, the battering, abuse, mentally, emotionally, physically. It went on since the age of 6 until 16. So for my
Yeah,
whole formative, I was treated a particular way, but not just in the fact of that I was beaten, but the fact that um, all my brothers and sisters witnessed it, and they didn't go through that. I was the only child that experienced that.
really?
So that was, yeah. So that was very difficult. That
That's
was
why I
very,
said,
very
you
difficult.
know, I think the family response to you as an individual, when
Mm,
you as a child deep down are like, this is wrong. And
mm,
when people around you do not respond in the same
mm,
way, I think that that can be as equally damaging as the abuse. It
mm.
is an abuse, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Because
It was because basically my mom was basically teaching them how to treat me,
yeah.
and I grew up feeling lesser
Hmm.
than, so how do you forgive those things? But I did, and have, and was able to find that within me,
Yeah.
you know really, really, really. And so I'm calm and at peace. And yeah, there are other things in my life that have happened, and because I forgave such a big thing, it was easy to forgive all the other things that came after it,
Mm.
you know,
It's quite
because you're not down the biggest wall.
yeah. It's quite funny when you talk about weight as well, because I remember there was a moment when I was in prayer, and I kind of had this prayer to God, and I was like, "'Cause I'm sorry, I'm not praying that much, you know." But I was a little bit angry, and I just felt
Mm,
I was numb. That's the only way I
mm,
could describe it. I was so numb, and then I submitted, I prayed, and I just said, "Look, God, please forgive me. and please remove this numbness from my heart. It's stopping me from turning to you. You know, I'm
Yes.
deep down, I'm angry. And, you know, there and then, there was this massive weight that just dropped. Like,
Right. So you felt like that because you chose to release. You see, the day that you make your mind up that I am sick and tired of being sick and tired,
yeah,
something, I don't even know how to call it, miraculous, whatever you want to call it, but something shifts because you made a choice inside. It's like having a sink full of dirty water. It will always stay there until you pull the plug. Now, you're not the one forcing the water down, but you pulled the plug.
yeah, so,
And nature and natural gravity pulls down all the rubbish.
mhm,
So that's how I felt about my forgiveness issue. But then also there was another thing as well that happened was I had to start loving myself because without self-love, I could never forgive myself. And
mm,
so I had to start off with loving me and then forgiving myself for believing the lies and believing that other people had power over me and for feeling like I paused my life for so long because I was angry. So I had to forgive myself for all those things and all the other things that happened as a consequence of me being a victim.
mm. It's funny because isn't it so funny how I've started with you immediately? Because I said, you know, this whole series is going to be let's talk, you know, let's heal.
Mm.
And it's like, you're right, you know, the minute we forgive, we can
Mhm.
start healing,
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm.
Um, my emotion just, it's like I get shudders just thinking about it because I've been hurting for such a long time. And, you know, if I be honest, I'm hurting my children. You know, while I'm hurting my children because my children don't get the best of me.
Mm.
And the minute that I
Mm.
started this journey of
Mm.
forgiveness and healing and being able to just be alone with myself. Do you remember I said that to you the
Mm.
other day? I said, you can't
Yeah.
be at peace. Loneliness, you can't be lonely if you know
If you're at peace, yeah,
how to be
it's
alone
a
with
great
yourself,
statement.
you
You need to
know?
make it into a t-shirt. We need that as a
Yeah,
t-shirt.
quoted Shalina Lip,
Yeah, yeah,
copyright.
yeah. You need
But
that as a t-shirt.
yeah, but it's so true, you know, because I think when you're in darkness, you know,
Mm.
that voice, that script, like you said, you know, the
Yeah,
person that's telling the story, you know, gloats. Yeah, you went through this and you went
yeah,
through
yeah,
that, you know.
yeah.
But what I'm beautiful and I just, you know, I'm gonna end it here and tell you thank you so much because I've learned more about you today without getting emotional. I didn't know half the stuff that you just told me today. And thank you so much for sharing it on here. And, you know, it's beautiful, Audrey, because, you know, what I realize is that there are people in the world that go through stuff. And not only do they get through it, but they choose to share their pain with others so that others can heal, you know. And I really hope that that's what comes out of this, you know, this
Yes,
union
yes,
is
yes,
God
yes,
blesses it and allows it to
yes, yes,
reach those that can really benefit from it, you know.
yes.
Any last words from yourself?
Oh my goodness. I had a thought process, but you know what? Start with yourself. It's just self-love. Look in the mirror and love on you. That's the first place that you start. And then
Yeah.
everything else falls away. Once you're loving you, everything else falls away. And forgiveness isn't an overnight thing. Like I said, it took me so many years.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we interpret someone with an angry personality. We think that it's a personality. Well, it actually isn't. It's an unforgiveness issue because we're protecting ourselves. Yeah, so sometimes we think that people are just this hard personality, but no, sometimes it's just we're protecting.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, thank you so much. And
Thank you for the invitation.
I look forward. I understand you're doing your own series of videos.
Oh, yes, I've got the Forgiveness Godmother podcast. So it's on YouTube. So you can hit me up, have a look as well. You know, yeah, I'm
I will put a
excited
link
having
for
these
you,
kind of
definitely.
conversations, with amazing people. Yeah, I'm
Well,
really excited.
thank you so
And thank
much for
you
your
too.
patience and for your wisdom. Thank you so much, and
You're
I'm sure this
welcome.
won't be the last time that I'll have to, when I finally get to the UK, we'll have a cuppa.
Oh, yeah, it's been ages since I've seen you. Ages.
Oh, okay. Take care and thank you.
That's it. That's it.